The afternoon sun blazed down on a quiet countryside road as a group of bikers roared past, their engines growling like thunder. They came across a young man unloading hay from his truck near a small family farm. With his worn boots and simple demeanor, he seemed like an easy target for their rough jokes and mocking laughs. What they didn't know was that this farm boy was no ordinary man. Fresh off a grueling Navy SEAL deployment, he had returned home to help his father and reconnect with his roots. Behind his calm exterior was someone trained to face unimaginable challenges and remain unshaken under pressure. The bikers circled closer, their jeers growing louder, confident they were in control of the situation. But as the tension escalated, they had no idea they were pushing the wrong man too far. Something was about to happen they'd never forget. The young man, Ethan, didn't flinch as the bikers surrounded him, their smirks widening as they thought they had the upper hand. He calmly set down the bale of hay, wiping his hands on his jeans, his expression unreadable. To them, he looked like an easy mark. A small-town kid with nothing but dirt roads and chores to his name. What they couldn't see were the scars beneath his shirt, earned in the unforgiving heat of combat zones. They didn't know about the months spent pushing his body and mind to the limit, about the missions that tested every ounce of his strength and discipline. The leader of the group revved his engine, shouting taunts meant to intimidate. Ethan didn't respond. His steady gaze and measured breathing only fueled their bravado. Yet beneath his calm exterior, years of training had kicked in, quietly assessing the situation. The air felt charged, like the calm before a storm. Ethan's father watched from the porch, his hands gripping the railing tightly. He knew his son had changed since coming home, though Ethan rarely spoke about what he'd been through. The bikers didn't see it, but the old man could tell something was simmering beneath his son's calm demeanor. He hesitated, unsure if he should step in or let Ethan handle it. One of the bikers dismounted, swaggering over with a mocking grin. "What's the matter, farm boy? Too scared to say something?" He taunted, shoving Ethan lightly on the shoulder. The others laughed, their voices carrying through the still countryside. Ethan remained motionless, his eyes steady and unwavering. Inside, he was calculating every move, every escape route, every potential threat. He didn't want trouble, but he learned long ago that sometimes trouble finds you, no matter how much you try to avoid it. As the bikers stepped closer, another figure emerged from the barn, a younger boy, Ethan's little brother, holding a pitchfork. His wide eyes darted nervously between the bikers and Ethan. "Go back inside," Ethan said firmly, his voice low but commanding. The bikers' laughter quieted for a moment as they exchanged looks. Something about Ethan's tone hinted that he wasn't someone to push too far. Still, they weren't ready to back down. The leader chuckled, stepping off his bike. "Looks like you've got some guts. Let's see how far they'll take you." The tension thickened, the air heavy with unspoken challenges. Ethan's muscles coiled like a spring, waiting for the inevitable. But he wasn't the only one with secrets that day. Unseen, hidden from view, a neighbor had been watching everything unfold, and they were already dialing for help. The leader of the bikers approached Ethan, his smirk widening as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a knife. He twirled it casually, the blade catching the sunlight. "You think you're tough?" he sneered. "Let's see how you handle this." Ethan's father took a step forward, his face pale. But Ethan raised a hand, stopping him in his tracks. "Stay back," he said quietly, his voice steady but firm. His little brother froze too, clutching the pitchfork tightly, unsure whether to stay or run. The bikers began circling closer, their engines revving as if to drown out any sense of calm. Ethan's eyes flicked between them, his body tense but composed. Every sound, every movement around him sharpened in his mind. He wasn't just standing in a field anymore, he was back in the chaos of his deployments, his instincts taking over. The leader lunged suddenly, the knife flashing forward. In a blur of motion, Ethan sidestepped, his hand catching the man's wrist with precision. The biker froze, his confidence cracking as he realized Ethan's grip was like iron. The group erupted in shouts, revving engines louder, but none of them dared to make the next move. Ethan held the leader's gaze, his voice low but firm. "I don't want to hurt you," he said, his tone calm yet carrying an edge that sent a chill through the group. The leader tried to pull free, but Ethan didn't budge, his years of training evident in every controlled movement. Everyone turned to see a shadowy figure stepping out of the tree line, moving with a confidence that matched Ethan's. It was an older man, his weathered face calm but commanding. Ethan's father's eyes widened in recognition. "Commander Hart?" he whispered, almost to himself. The name struck a chord with Ethan too. Though he hadn't seen the man since his CL training days, Hart had been one of the toughest instructors, known for pushing recruits past their limits. What was he doing here now, in the middle of nowhere? The bikers hesitated, sensing the sudden shift in energy. Hart's eyes swept over the scene, taking in the tense standoff with practiced ease. "This is how you're spending your leave, Murphy," he said, addressing Ethan by his Navy call sign. His tone was light, his gaze was sharp, cutting straight through the chaos. Ethan didn't answer, his attention split between Hart and the bikers, who now looked more uncertain than ever. Hart took a few steps closer, his presence alone commanding respect. "You boys picked the wrong farm," he said, his voice calm but carrying an undeniable weight. The sirens were almost upon them now, and the bikers exchanged frantic looks. But before anyone could move, Hart's gaze shifted to the leader. "You've got about 10 seconds to decide if you're smart enough to walk away from this," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. The bikers seemed ready to scatter, but just as the leader started to retreat, one of his men shouted, "We don't take orders from some old guy," and reached for something in his jacket. Hart's eyes narrowed, and Ethan stepped forward ready to act. The tension hit a boiling point as the stakes rose higher than anyone had anticipated. Ethan didn't wait for the man to finish reaching into his jacket. In a fluid, controlled motion, he stepped between Hart and the biker, his body coiled like a spring. "Stop," Ethan said, his voice sharp and commanding, slicing through the tense air. The biker froze, caught off guard by the authority in Ethan's tone. The sirens were deafening now, and the first flash of blue lights appeared over the hill. The bikers hesitated, torn between their instincts to flee and their pride. The leader glared at Ethan, his fists clenched. "You got lucky," he growled, trying to save face as he signaled for his crew to leave. One by one, they revved their engines and sped off, disappearing down the dirt road just as the police vehicles rolled into view. Ethan exhaled slowly, his muscles relaxing as the immediate threat dissipated. The officers jumped out, their hands on their holsters, scanning the scene. Ethan raised his hands calmly, explaining the situation in a measured tone. The officers nodded, clearly recognizing the discipline in his demeanor. As the bikers disappeared into the distance, Hart turned to Ethan with a slight smile. "Handled that well, Murphy," he said, his tone approving. "But I wasn't just passing through." Ethan frowned, his mind still racing. "What do you mean?" Hart's expression turned serious. "We've got a situation, something bigger than this." He gestured toward the empty road. "Your leave might be cut short." Ethan's father, standing nearby, looked concerned but said nothing. Ethan nodded, already understanding what this meant. Just when he thought he found a moment of peace, the weight of duty was calling him back. As the police wrapped up their report, Ethan glanced at his family and the quiet fields around them. The calm had returned, for now. But deep down, he knew the storm was far from over. As the police cars drove away, the quiet of the countryside settled in once more. Ethan stood for a moment, watching the fading sunlight stretch across the fields. His father approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You've been through a lot," he said softly. "I'm proud of the man you've become." Ethan nodded, the weight of his father's words grounding him. "I just want to protect what matters," he replied, glancing at the barn where his younger brother was peeking out cautiously. Ethan gave him a reassuring nod, and the boy stepped outside, his grip on the pitchfork loosening. Hart lingered near the edge of the field waiting. Ethan knew this wasn't the end of his responsibilities, but for now, there was peace. "You'll let me know when?" Ethan asked, his voice steady. "When it's time," Hart replied. With a nod, he turned and walked away. As Ethan watched him leave, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just a farm boy or a Navy SEAL. He was both, and he'd always be ready to stand tall for what mattered most.